a man with a half head, a plane crash survivor, and a man who had to cut his own arm off. These are 10 people who survived the impossible. Number 10, Carlos Rodriguez. Carlos Rodriguez was left with a distorted head and the nickname Haffy after surviving a horrifying accident that should have been impossible to survive. At the young age of 14, Carlos, his cousin, and a friend, under heavy drug influence, stole a car to take it for a joyride. Carlos, who was driving at the time, ended up hitting a pole at high speed, which sent Carlos flying out of the car. He landed directly on his head at incredibly high velocity, which should have killed him. Doctors were able to save his life by removing a significant amount of flesh and bone from his skull to ensure his survival. He returned to his life in Miami, Florida soon after. Despite his social messages for people to stay away from the life of drugs, it seems as if Carlos is still struggling to leave that life behind, admitting that he still smokes a good amount of drugs. Number 9, Vesna Vulovic. As seen in popular movies like Iron Man 3, when a plane breaks open while airborne, the air sucks everything and everyone in the plane out into the sky. A death sentence for anyone inside, but not for Vesna Vulovic. Vesna's entire flight was sucked out into the atmosphere when explosives detonated in the luggage compartment. Thanks to a rogue food cart pinning the flight attendant down, Vesna was able to use it to stay inside the plane as it descended to the ground. Upon crashing, she suffered from broken legs and vertebrae, temporary paralysis, a fractured skull, and was in a temporary coma. Vesna experienced full amnesia of the incident, only remembering getting on the plane and then waking up in the hospital. It took Vesna less than a year to completely relearn how to walk again. Amidst the horrifying injuries, Vesna went on to live quite a fruitful life, passing away in the year 2016 at the age of 66. Number 8, Aaron Ralston. The next experience on this list is easily the most famous one, having an entire movie based off the experience. That's right, this is the experience that 127 Hours was based on. In 2003, at the young age of 27 years old, Aaron Ralston's arm was crushed and pinned by a giant boulder while climbing in Utah. With minimal food and water, he believed he was a dead man, having told no one exactly where he would be going that day. Finding the removal of the boulder impossible, Aaron was forced to take a blunt knife and cut his arm off if he was ever to escape this perilous experience on the 6th day of being trapped. As if that wasn't painful enough, he needed to travel an entire 65 feet down the mountain to fully escape. The 2010 film based on Aaron's near-death scenario was a huge success, and Aaron actually really liked the movie. He went on record saying it was the best film ever made. If you think these were scary, things are about to get scarier. Keep watching to see what's next. Number 7, Jean Hillard. In 1980, when Jean Hillard's car slid off the road and knowing she'd never survive the cold in a broken car, she made the brave decision to walk 2 miles to a friend's house in freezing cold. Jean ended up falling unconscious just 15 feet from her friend's door. She was knocked out in the snow for an entire 6 hours until her friend found and drove her to the hospital. Being in the snow that long turned Jean into a human icicle. It was so bad that her friend assumed she was dead while driving her to the hospital. Upon arriving there, the doctors wrapped her in an electric thermal blanket to thaw her out. A normal human breathes a minimum of 12 breaths per minute. Just 5 hours after her friend found her, she was thawed and woke up completely healthy, able to regain control of her legs and arms. Her first thought upon waking up was being scared her dad would be mad for crashing the car, or just glad she's alive. Number 6, Harrison O'Keefe. In the year 2013, Harrison's tugboat overturned, and the incoming water sucked him into the bathroom. With the rest of the crew dead, Harrison was alone, having to survive underwater in just his underwear. The boat fell 30 meters to the bottom of the sea, and Harrison had to fight to escape the bathroom into another room, which had barely enough of an air pocket for him to survive. Harrison has gone on record saying, "All around me was just black and noisy. I was crying and calling on Jesus to rescue me. I prayed so hard. I was so hungry and thirsty and cold, and I was just praying to see some kind of light." After 60 hours, almost 2.5 days, a team of South African divers arrived to inspect the wreckage and search for bodies and found Harrison fighting for his life. The diving team had gone on record saying they had absolutely no idea how the area of the boat had not filled, saying someone was looking after him that day. Number 5, Dr. Julian Diller. At the ripe age of 17, Julian Diller's plane broke apart midair. She fell a full 2 miles into the Peruvian rainforest. She was the only survivor of the crash. The airplane ride was only supposed to run for about an hour on Christmas Eve, but around 25 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft was struck by lightning. In moments, she and her mother were in the open sky above the rainforest, recalling the experience by saying, "I was outside in open air. I hadn't left the plane had left me." She woke up later on the forest floor with a broken collarbone, sprained knee, gnashes on her right shoulder and left calf, one eye swollen shut, and the other eye's vision was narrowed down to a mere slit. She survived in the forest for 11 days before finding safety. To make matters worse, it was in the middle of the wet season, so there was no fruit around for her to pick, leaving her only with a small bag of candy to use as sustenance. Number 4. Dick Williams. The Titanic is the most infamous boat in history, having sunk when struck by a massive iceberg. 1,500 of the 2,240 passengers and crew died that day. 21-year-old tennis star Dick Williams wanted to attend Harvard, having decided to move from his home in Switzerland to the United States aboard the Titanic. Upon the ship's sinkage, Williams found himself in the frozen sea, eventually managing to climb into a collapsible lifeboat that had not been fully assembled yet. He suffered from immeasurably severe frostbite on his legs. When rescued by a rescue boat named the Carpathia, the doctor on board told Williams he would need to amputate his legs, to which Williams adamantly refused. "I'm going to need these legs." He then began pacing up and down the rescue boat's deck to attempt to restore circulation to his legs. Only 12 weeks later, he was back in the game and went on to win at the 1924 Olympics and many U.S. Nationals. Starting now, things get even crazier. Keep watching until the end. Number 3. Anatoly Bergosky. Russian scientist Anatoly Bergosky was working maintenance on a U-70 synchrotron, a particle accelerator known as the highest energy accelerator in the USSR at the time. In July of 1978, Anatoly was surveying the accelerator when he noticed a malfunctioning light module that was supposed to let scientists know whether the accelerator was on or off. Assuming the accelerator was off or broken, he stuck his head inside to inspect and attempt to fix the accelerator. Unaware that the lights were malfunctioning and the accelerator was actually on, he was struck in the head by 300,000 rads of radiation. A mere 1,000 rads are enough to put a human down for good. He described seeing the brightest light in his life after everything went dark, continuing to fix the malfunction, reporting it but not the fact he was struck by the rads. The next day he suffered from a severely swollen face, opting to go see a doctor where they discovered it was a small beam of radiation, not a sweeping gust of it, so only the one area of his head was affected. But even with that fact on hand, doctors still concluded that he should not have survived such a blast, having burned a hole through his brain. Number 2. Peter Siebold. There are a lot of near-death airplane experiences, but this next experience changes up the game with a similar scenario, but in a spaceship. On October 31st, 2014, Peter Siebold was a trained astronaut tasked with the test flight of the Virgin Galactic Spaceship 2 at 50,000 feet in the air. Peter went on to record recalling hearing what he could only describe as paper fluttering in the wind, before the cabin broke up around him and his co-pilot, who was killed in the incident. As he began his descent towards the Earth's surface, he was still attached to his pilot seat and needed to remove himself from it before he could deploy his personal parachute. It took him until around 10,000 feet from the surface before he could remove himself and deploy the parachute, slowing his descent down just enough to allow for a survivable impact. Peter was able to maneuver himself just enough to land in a bush, still suffering from a broken arm, scratched corneas, and dozens of bruises and scratches. The NTSB concluded the accident was a result of pilot error, due to them being asked to carry out dozens of tasks within a second's notice while flying at supersonic speeds. Number 1. Salvador Alvarenga. The final experience on our list is no airplane or car crash, but includes someone being lost at sea for a ridiculously long amount of time. In the year 2012, one Salvador Alvarenga and his fishing partner Ezequiel Cordoba experienced the full might of a severe thunderstorm while trying to return to the shore of Mexico after a long fishing trip. Their boat was a mere 25 feet long, making it virtually invisible at sea by outside spectators. Quickly, their engine failed, and they were stranded to survive the trials of the sea. For 2 months, the pair caught animals for food and collected rainwater to sustain themselves. But on the 2-month mark, Ezequiel fell into a deep depression and stopped eating and drinking, causing him to die incredibly fast, already malnourished. Salvador noted talking to his friend's corpse as if he was still alive for an entire 6 days before he was forced to dump him in the water. After 438 days at sea, 1 year and 2 months, he was found by the Iban Atoll, where he had to draw finger pictures to communicate and explain his situation. After 2 weeks of hospital care, he went home to live the rest of his life in peace. Enjoyed the video? Now watch this one.